Good morning again. Welcome to the next session, still on Southern Africa in the 19th century. This topic will be considering the Great Trek and the establishment of Boas Republic. Again, you need to like, to share, and to subscribe to the tutorial session for more no clips on our study. The Great Trek, like the Mfikeni, happened to be one of the momentous migration in the history of Southern Africa, as we have discussed. Although in terms of causes, in terms of geographical spread, the number of people involved, and the group of people affected, it was different from the Mfikani. No, it's all the same like Mfikani anyway, because it marks an important epitaph or epoch in the history of the region. From 1836, as we have noted, from 1836, other parties of Boer farmers had left the Cape Colony after one another because of the policy of the Cape government, and eventually about 10,000 of them moved away from the Cape Colony to settle further northwards, into the interior. Two stages of migrations are discernible in the course of the Great Trek. First, there was a mass exodus of Boer farmers northeastward of the region of Natal, northwards and northwest across the veldt that had been rendered vacant as an aftermath of the Mfikeni. You remember when we talk about the Mfikeni and some of the effects, the demobilization and dispossession of people. Okay, so we look at some of the major or the immediate or the remote causes of the Great Trek. So the immediate cause of the Great Trek was land hunger, land scarcity, as we examine. The British government's policy of imposing land rent was considered burdensome by the Boer farmers. This was some of the major factors that led to the Great Trek. Of course, what is the Great Trek? We talk about the movement of Europeans, the Dutch, away from the Cape where they settled because of the British subjugation of the Cape. So it was noted that the rents the British government imposed on the Boers were regarded as being too much, and there were complaints of delays in the issuance of deeds, even for those who could afford some of these deeds of land. So the land problem was complicated in 1820 when about 5,000 British settlers landed in the northeast of the Cape. Okay, so by this, the Boers charged the British administration at the Cape of favoritism in the allocation of land to the new arrivals, which further aggravated the land shortage. It was alleged that the British, rather than adopt an inclusive policy of land distribution, focus more on other Europeans, especially English people, all right, and to the neglect of the Dutch and other Europeans. So this actually fueled mass movement of Dutch people from the Cape into the hinterland. Added to this was the many years of succeeding droughts, which created the problems of scarcity of pastures for cattle. It was in the face of this difficulty, vis-a-vis the traditional belief that every Boers was entitled to at least 60,000 acres of land, that they began to leave the Cape in mass, in large number. This was because going beyond the frontiers into the interior was the only solution to the land scarcity to the Boers. While the land problem was real, a closer look at the Great Trek would reveal that its causes lay much deeper than land hunger. All right, so we look at other factors such as the Anglicization of the Cape. I told you in our class that the Anglicization, just like the land hunger, was another critical factor that impelled the Boers to move. Fundamentally, it was a protest movement against what was perceived as the increasing Anglicization of the Cape. What is Angli? Angli, from the word Anglo, you should know Angli, to make English. All right. In 1806, after the second coming of the British, a number of changes were introduced in the Cape Colony. As we've noted, these changes affected the Boer farmers, and saw the resurgence of their aversion to any governmental authority. So they started protesting, and boycotting certain British policies and enactments. Among the political and administrative changes inaugurated by the British government was the abolition of the popular Boers Court, Amradin, all right, in which the Boer farmers participated in the administration of justice. So this was a very, very great injustice to the Boers, and in its place, circuit courts in which English magistrates resided were set up. Also, the commando system of the Boers, which was a paramilitary self-defense system, was abrogated, and the Boers were subjected to military service, which was quite uh, unlawful to them. And after 1822 proclamation, English superseded the Dutch as the official language of the Cape, of the Cape Colony. And more than ever before, the Boers felt the loss of their political power. Since the British had decided to anglicize the language at the Cape. The British occupation also brought into the Cape Colony some liberal ideas which struck at the very root of Boers' belief, such that the late 18th century and the 19th century were a period of revival in England and Western Europe in general. It was in the age of liberalism when the concept of freedom and equality were being revived. These movements, which had their echoes originating from Western Europe, could be regarded as the external influence that stimulated the growth of liberalism in Southern Africa in the 19th century. And these liberal ideas were spread within the Cape Colony, mostly by the Christian missionaries, and this actually didn't augur well for the colonial ambition and exploitative tendencies of the Dutch. For instance, after 1816, several missionary organizations such as the Glasgow and Wesleyan Society joined the Moravian Brethren and London Missionary Society that were already active in the region. And some of their evangelistic activities contradicted or contravened the cultural beliefs and the capitalist exploitative tendencies of the Dutch. So there was collusion of interest. Besides, there was an influx of missionaries from Germany, Denmark, and France. A notable missionary figure that loomed large in connection with the growth of liberalism is Dr. John Philip, the superintendent of the London Missionary Society, whose activity particularly condemned some of the some dispositions of the Boers. He arrived the Cape in February 1819 and championed the cause of the oppressed Southern African people, especially the case of the Khoikhoi, who had been largely exterminated by the Dutch. So it was through his influence that the Cape government ordered a commission of inquiry in 1823 to look into the Boers-Khoikhoi's relationship. And between 1826 and 1828, Dr. John petitioned the Secretary of State in England on the plight of the Khoikhoi, the Otentos, in the hands of the Boers. And he published the book, which is titled Researches in Southern Africa, in which the equality suffered by the indigenous people was denounced in the hands of the Boers. Suffice to say that through the effort of the missionaries, a number of laws were now promulgated to regulate the relationship between the Boers and the Khoikhoi, the San, and the Bantus in Southern Africa. These laws were often directed towards eroding inequality between the white and the non-white, and this didn't augur well for the Boers in Southern Africa. The most notable of this law was the 50th Ordinance, which was passed in July 1828, largely as a result of John Philip's efforts. The ordinance affected equality between white and black, between the Otentos, the Khoikhoi, and the European. It regulated relations between masters and servants, which was the status quo before the entry of the missionary into the hinterland. In this case, it regulated the exploitation of the Boers, of the Khoikhoi, particularly of their pastors, their cattle, and the Bantu of the agricultural land. It also limited the duration of labor contract to 1 year. It protected the servants against the unscrupulous masters' exploitation and provided that children of non-whites could only be apprenticed with the consent of their parents instead of the servitude system that has been established by the Dutch, the slavery system established. The ordinance also swept away the restrictive Otentos law and gave non-whites the right to also own land, which was a very, very good development. The 50th Ordinance was followed by the Emancipation Act of 1833, which set all slaves free in Southern Africa. This was a climax of all the earlier measures aimed at spreading liberation in the Cape Colony. So with this development, over 35,000 slaves were set free by this Emancipation Act, and this didn't augur well with the Boers. There was going to be a showdown. To the Boers who believe in the doctrine of Baskap, that is that they represented the master race and were destined, were the destined instrument of civilization in Southern Africa, while they regarded the black people, as the descendants of Ham, who were cursed. And of course, so these acts and ordinances aim at putting white and non-white on the same pedestal, and of course, which to the Boers was sacrilegious. So they could not stand the British government policy of enforcing equality between them and the black people. And indication of this bitterness was the Slatter's Neck Rebellion in 1815. What was this Slatter's Neck Rebellion? It was characterized with Frederick Bezoon, a farmer, a Boers farmer in the eastern province of the Cape Colony, who was summoned to court for his cruelty against his servant, all right, particularly the Khoikhoi people. A British officer and 12 Otentos were sent, for instance, to fetch him. But following the example of other treacherous Dutch against the British authority, Frederick fired at them, and he was killed in the shootout that ensued. So his brother Johannes swore to avenge Frederick's death and tried to rally other Boers farmers in rebellion. Okay, so Johannes was killed. 32 other Boers farmers were also taken prisoners, and 5 were hanged at a place called Slatter's Neck. Okay, so the Slatter's Neck incident showed the extent which the government at the Cape was determined to impose this equality. So it was feared that the government would encourage mixed marriages, and from their point of view, all these measures amounted to offsetting what they regarded as natural order, putting the blacks and the whites on the same pedestal. So the Boers were ready to fight this, to finish. Thus, by the beginning of the 1830s, the Boer farmers had accumulated a lot of grievances against the British administration at the Cape, and the basis of their culture was said to have been undermined as gradual substitution of Dutch institutions with English institutions was being carried out, and the government was becoming too centralized and interfering. So it interfered indeed in matters such as relations between masters and servants, and more fundamental was the equality between the white and the non-white, which the British stipulated. All these were the negations of what the Boers believe in, of course, and this had untold effects on the relationship between the British and the Boers. On the one hand, it also colored the relationship between the Dutch and the Africans. So let's look at the African and British reaction to all of these developments. By November 1838, the Boers had established themselves in 3 major areas, such as the Trans-Orangia, which is between the Orange and the Veldt River. As we've noted, this area between the Veldt River and the Var was the largest area of Boers farmers concentration and of course these 3 areas were closely federated with the Natal being regarded as a senior partner. So in their migration into this interior, conflict with the Bantu whose land was being appropriated was inevitable in the course of this event. Among these several clashes that ensued was the Battle of Blood River in December 1838, where several lives were lost, both on the side of the Africans and on the side of the Boers. About 3,000 Zulu particularly were killed, and a number of Boers leaders like Marys and Post Gita also lost their lives. So the Boers were not to be left alone by the British, however. So of the 3 settlement areas, Natal caused the British government at the Cape the greater anxiety, and it was said that the British government feared the extermination of the Bantu by the Boers. Hence, they concentrated their intervention in the Natal. So, but the reason was that Britain was afraid of the Boers' permanent occupation of the Natal. So, on the one hand, you could say the British interest itself was also fueled by their economic interest, not basically the concern about the lives and the patrimony of the Africans, as we are going to see in the subsequent topic when we look at the mineral revolution and all of that. So this was because the Natal was a seaport settlement. The possibility of Boers aligning with foreign powers to hostile Britain existed. Furthermore, the port of Natal also offered facility for arms, importation, leaving Natal in the hands of the Boer to the British was to jeopardize the British interest. So it was this consideration that led George Napier, the then governor of the Cape, to order the annexation of Natal in 1843, of course, according to them, in the interest of the indigenous people. In December 1845, Natal was constituted into a province of the Cape. And following the annexation, many Boers, including their leaders, moved further into the interior between the Orange. And so this explains the reason why you have large concentration of the Boers in the Orange Free State and the Transvaal, which is known as located around the Vaal rivers. So here, they proclaimed the Orange River their sovereignty. So the Dutch carved a niche for themselves, around the Orange River area. The British government at the Cape, although reacted against this, by following up the Boers. And in 1848, Sir Harry Smith, who had arrived at the Cape as governor in 1847, proclaimed the new Orange River sovereignty, a province, to the British. It became a crown colony settlement under the British authority. Of course, the Boers never took this lightly. They encountered the British forces under the Pretorius at the Battle of Boomsplat in August 1848. The Boers were defeated, although in the encounter, and the battle has come to be regarded as marking the end of the Great Trek. But what is significant for us to know is that the Great Trek was stimulated by the economic purpose, all right, economic exigency, the quest for land, the land scarcity, then the Anglicization, the cultural imperialism introduced by the British by imposing their customs, their language, all right, upon the Dutch and all the Boers in Southern Africa. So this actually led to so let's consider the consequences of the Great Trek on the people of the region. One obvious consequence of the trek was the expansion of Europeans into the African interior. By 1854, there were two Boer republics in the interior. I've mentioned that the Orange Free State and the Transvaal. So since these two republics were later to be engulfed in the status of British colonies, the Great Trek does mark an important step in the territorial expansion of Britain into the interior of Southern Africa. Because as we mentioned, initially the British were only restricted to the Cape. Although Britain was never really consistent in her policy in Southern Africa throughout the 19th century, there is no doubt that the trek marked the beginning of more British involvement in the affairs of Southern Africa. All right, so of course this did not go well, as we are going to consider in our subsequent topics. It brought the British and the Dutch in confrontation with each other. Of course, one of the topics we'll be treating is the Anglo-Boer War in Southern Africa. Thank you.